The following clip is exclusive content from the university. Access over 300 videos and 26 courses with advanced metaphysics on demand. Jump in live chats with Savan and the rest of the tribe. New materials are available monthly along with guides and regimens. Subscribe today and save $25 off your first month membership. Links are in the descriptions. Subscribe to Secret Energy TV or this channel for future show notifications. Wholeness.
See, before we had language, okay, we were really, and I don't even say we, I don't know what the leap is for that kind of being. We're all connected, but even to say we, you would have probably a difficult time relating. And in this case, I'm talking about to the orangutan and the chimpanzee and the monkey, okay, who does not have the language system that we have. But they have something very important to make them something that we need to observe to connect the links or dots on something, and that's they have this hand. And we talked about that this hand, as far as phi is concerned, and the geometry within this hand creates much of the power in this realm. That's why it's so symbolic to actually being every day. You know, we use in the hand, everything we build is with the hand. This is what five fingers. This is the pentagram. This is at PHI or phi. So this hand right here is indeed very, very magical, very important. And the monkey has one. And the monkey plays around and uses the hand, orangutan using the hand to create rudimentary tools and to get termites and things out of holes, right? But somehow here we are, we're already trying to take stuff off in space. We got rockets, you know, we got computers and all that. So what is the missing link between a monkey and human 3.0 or whatever version we're on right now? What I'm going to prove inconclusively, but you should know is it's the language. And the language is not just something we learn. That's why they want to make it like, well, we were going, ooh, ooh, and then we were like, ooh, and then all of a sudden complex, we was like, yo, what's good, girl? Like it was just, we just went from that to that, and that's not how it happened. The language was actually put in our mind. You see what I mean? Because language in itself is from the Taurus. So the original language is a Taurus. It's a vibration, it's a tone, it's a frequency. And so when we were given that, or we were birthed in or initiated into that, that's when we knew. The Taurus is the apple in the garden. They say when they bit it, then he knew he was like a god. It's like once you're aware that you have a Taurus, once you're aware of the Taurus, it gives you a certain level of reasoning and cognizance that separates you light years from where the orangutan is. But see, they want to put you back in that box. They want you to be a monkey again. They want to tell you you're a monkey. And what I mean by that is that you got to observe monkeys. There's no beef against monkeys, but monkeys be fighting all the time. Like there are monkeys run by the house all the time. I'm in Costa Rica. They keep up a lot of noise. Just today, you hear the screaming. Ah! Ah! And I'm like, oh shit, what the hell's going on? Oh, the monkeys. Go watch a documentary. They ain't just acting. The monkeys have a hierarchical system. Monkeys, the good monkeys that are in the hierarchy stay over here. The other monkeys sleep out in the cold. The other monkey sitting in the jacuzzi, and he's the king monkey. He gets all the monkey girls. And then the rest of the other monkeys, they just can sit on the outskirts and beef and fight with each other, right? So it's just like they fighting over food. So this is what they want. And this is why the language has been confused, because it's degrading because people don't have the original language, it's degrading them back to the same mire that they crawled out of. That's why they got the racial problems and the racial issues, and they trying to figure out, you know, if you look at the world right now, look, let me get my board. Hold on real quick. Hold on. I'm going in on them. Hold on. Let me just show you, because, you know, I'm not going to get out of this without addressing the elephant in the room. Give me one moment. All right, here we go. You know, because we, you know, dealing with these folks, we be back at the Planet of the Apes, and everybody will be accepting it too. It's like, oh, well, you know, this and this and this, and it's okay. And I don't know, I don't believe. You know, everybody's so smart nowadays. Oh, well, we're going to listen to correspondents and this person who knows all this, and they're going to tell us all this. And meanwhile, these people don't know anything about the language that they're even speaking in. So how do they even know what it is that they're actually saying? And they're so convinced. running around in this little illusion. So look at it right here. So I said in everything, because the words control everything, the words have to be in play. And if you know what the word means, then you know what's actually going on. Let me see here. Okay, there I am. So look, who noticed this? Did anybody notice this? Who noticed this? That when I was watching Buddy like 4 or 5 years ago when he was running with Obama, I said even personally in a mental note to myself when I was doing the etymology on Obama, right? The Barack, the savior, right? The Kool-Aid. Everybody was asking me about Obama, and I was like, honestly, it's really the vice president guy. If that guy ever becomes president, we need to watch out, because that name right there, that's actually what I said. I got it on recording. To look up now, here we are, 6, 7, 8 years later, and we're at this point. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is that, for instance, like when Trump came through, the reason why we didn't have any wars, because I've lived through, I don't know how many wars now at being 43 years old. Like I'm glad we haven't gone live. We've been the most powerful army in the world, right? So if you gonna go, that means you signed up and didn't have to go forcibly. But I've literally lived through at least 10 to 12 wars since I've got here on the planet. And the only time that I can remember that there wasn't a war was about a few years ago, because that person was already committed to starting a civil war. Meaning that when Trump was in office, it was a civil war that was being waged. And the people were basically put into this 50-50. This is what they want, because you need a 50-50 to get a civil war. But in the previous times, though, you always had there was almost like a 70-30 going on, where 70% of the people were in agreement with the legislation and the powers that be. But when they kept it like that. They know how to manipulate these polls, right? However, when they start pushing it towards a 50-50, now it's about to be civil war. And that's kind of how it was. They had half of the folks on Trump's side and half of the folks on the Democrat side, right? And by the time the campaign was over, that's where America was, if you may. They were split. So that was the agenda, to do that to the Uniteds, right? Because that also happened in the United Kingdom in a few different ways. But now it's being done to the world, because now they're trying to make people determine who is really the side that you're going to jump on. And when you notice, if you go into any kind of news thread, comment thread, and you see what's going on, oh my goodness. Anybody who has just been stumped on by the United States is on Russia's side. Anybody who is you see what I mean? So it's just like, there's every single, if you're a Nazi, then you're with Ukraine, because you see what I mean? So it's just like every single small little pigeonhole, nook and cranny, crazy category that they have created, they still have now boiled that down to a 50-50. Either you're on this or this. But what do these words really mean? Is anybody familiar with the stock market or gambling or any of that? What do these two words mean in that realm? Because they have a real definition. What does it mean to place a bid, and what does it mean to place a put? A bid is when you're ready, you're going in. You may even be doubling down. This means that you're looking at the situation and you're ready to take whatever it is at the cost of what it is. Versus a put is you anticipate that it is going down. You put a price at what is going to go down, and when it goes down, you actually make money because you were able to make that call. So when you think about this from an energetic level, in a nutshell, what you can really say is that it's that gambling of everybody's energy, to where both sides are losers, but once again, it's red team or blue team, right? And then the matrix rolls out its next level of shenanigans, as if the one we can't speak of, that thing that starts with C, is just gone already. And then the new wave of tyrannical, the new tyrannical wave is here. Now watch this. And this is all, again, a product of the God that people worship. Watch. Because the worshiping is happening inside of the mind. The worshiping is happening inside of the language, and it's being so haphazardly done that it's like the repercussions. The repercussions are not allowing many to get their ground on and to actually fully experience what you came here on the realm to do. It's actually even mind controlling most people to feel like that they got to choose between these two maniacs, right? So give me 1 second here. I have a definition coming for Wooden or God. Now remember how this all happened, because the religions that are in the English tradition, it was like they just passed those traditions right over in the language. So despite the Christianity and all that, because these Anglo-Saxon kings, mainly the ones that are what they call upper gentry, the highborns, when they accepted Christianity as a way to unify their colonies, but they never changed their They never changed their beliefs. They never changed their heritage and their lineage. So what happened was everybody just inherited their lineage and then accepted it. And so if you became a serf, which is basically anybody who was absorbed into their kingdom, if you became a Slav or a Slovenian or a slave in their fiefdom, then you worshiped their king, Gud, as a god, because everybody in that realm that was a ruler had to be able to prove that they were a descendant of these highborn angelic or English bloodlines. Okay, so we're going to look real quick here. We're not going to harp on this, but we just want to make sure it's very clear that, because when people are telling you and they're asking you, why is all this happening? Why is God allowing this to go on? They need to understand that this is what God does. From that word, and maybe you just have a different definition of what we're talking about, but you need to be very clear with your words, because when you try to take somebody else's name and that name is already bound within the stars, you're not going to just change that, meaning that the Germanic god Gud's energy or vibration, because this is what they say in the tradition, that 3,000, 4,000 years ago, you didn't see any of the gods in this culture specifically depicted as like humans, but more as like energies that exist within things, right? So when we look here, and let me just remove myself from the screen. And this is just how backwards things are. Actually, let me pull up one more thing here, because just so people can see just how all of these sides are actually the same thing, but they have people running around here fighting on one side or another, dying in these wars. And then more than likely, because this is still the traditions that they're serving in, because they always got these priests and they always got these Orthodox creepos hanging around. Because of that, here it is, NASA right here. Let me see the highest member. Let me see here, highest member of the Sanhedrin. Highest member of the Sanhedrin. All right, here we go. Okay, so anyway, this term is Nazi, right? Whether they keep changing it or not, Nazi Sanhedrin. You know, sometimes, like for a while, I just had to actually copy and paste some of this stuff, just because you would go back and you wouldn't find it. So anyway, a Nazi is the highest member of the Sanhedrin. There's a Wikipedia that actually dictates that, okay? Why the Sanhedrin is actually a Jewish establishment. But then you would actually think that, again, that it was the Nazis against the Jews, right? So those are two conflicting things. Same thing here as this Odin. So as I said, now the Naz, a Naz would be then in this case a master of. Okay, so the word is a Naz is a master of. So a lot of the ending of Wooden's name, as in Wooden Naz, would end as the master of. And because people didn't visualize gods as actual people, but energies that filled everything, as you can see, Wooden was the leader of the possessed. delirious and raging, like when somebody is really going crazy, a madness and fury and a frenzy, okay, a furor, okay, frantic, wild, crazy, possessed, okay. So they're very clear that this word God is referring directly to this kind of energy. And so when that kind of energy is being evoked in the matrix, because there's a whole theology around this, as I said, the wild hunt, the wars, the whole nine, then it's like, okay, so you've taken on this culture. You don't want this stuff in your life. You don't want to live in this kind of world. You're trying to be with the original. The original is an opposite energy to this. It's not mad. It's not in a frenzy. It's not crazy. It's aware of what's happening around it. It actually knows what's going on. It's in the Zen moment. It actually is projecting what's going on. Something that's wild and crazy. That's another thing why you could see then that since we're talking about a certain type of energy, and this energy is now really becoming more of an id or id, you can see that part of God's frenzy is actually not knowing everything. It tries to know everything, but it doesn't know everything. This is like a general of war wants to know everything about what's going on in the land because it needs those logistics. It's like the same thing that we're dealing with right now in society. It's like the cell phones are spying on us, the cameras are spying on us, the AI is crawling all over the text, satellites are all in the sky. Who the hell is so damn afraid? It's because it wants to know everything. And that's why I say when we want to become God, we're basically saying that we want to enter into this delirium. And that's why their initiations surround this level of delirium. And they will sacrifice a person into that delirium and then be like, next. It's like, again, because they're disconnected. If you're wondering, well, why are they acting like this? Why are they doing this? Because they're disconnected. They don't know love because they don't know the original language. You see what I mean? So the more beings that come into the world that can't tap in because the original language is within, then they start living without. And then they go into this madness, this delirious rage and frenzy. And then they try to control the world and everything around them with that delirium. And this is why I said that today also you got to realize the power that you actually have, because the only thing that balances this out is so. You can imagine then that people would immediately get it wrong when, let me show you something. This is another big part of this. People would get it wrong with this idea of a good angel. Watch this. So what I explained to you earlier was I explained how you basically have, let me just wipe this board down real quick. I'm just having an issue here with this cloth, but we'll keep going with it. So let's look at this. So we have, let's look at the whole system in itself. Let's say that we're going to draw this as the torus. Okay? These two fields. Now, mind you that these two fields are also the two hemispheres of your brain. Let's just get a nice little drawing here so I can explain this. Okay, so that's good enough as a torus field. Okay, so how should I come at this? Okay, so let's first identify the field here. Let's map out the field because, you know, if you're traveling across terrain, before you make travels, you need to have the map. So we need to understand how is it, like, because you may ask me, like, well, can you identify this field? I even have to identify how language is now in this field and letters are now in this field, which is actually quite easy. But the first thing is I have to identify the field for you. The field is inside of you and it's all around you. And that's what also makes it omniscient. But you kind of need to understand how the field works and how it generates and how what you're seeing in the sky that you call the stars are actually these points on the field. And somebody was even on it today. They were like, it's the horizontal and the vertical waters. So what the ancients are saying is that every cross point of the field, now you can imagine there's a countless amount of cross points, because inside of your, let's put this into another context. Like remember I said that this is your brain, right? So let's imagine that in the center, that the brain actually has what we call the Crown Chakra. And what the Crown Chakra is like an interface of trillions, a countless amount of neurological wires, if you may, that are connected and interlinked with your field, and all the other fields are subsequently connected and interlinked by these what you would think of as tentacles, if you may, right? So you have this crown chakra. You have this crown chakra, and this crown chakra is what is connecting you into the field. So then you would say, so what is the field? So at every single point inside of the energetic field where the vertical and the horizontal energies, which is what you would say is masculine and feminine energies respectively, every place that they connect, life is created. And life is a light. So all the lights that you're seeing in the sky, if you weren't getting so much light pollution and your third eye was open, you would see all of the lights connecting. And you would see them connecting into a massive field. And you would be able to identify that every point in that light is actually a point that is connected in the field. And then all of this, as I mentioned, is actually connected into your brain. Okay, so this is the master field. Okay, so this would be you, Taurus head. Okay, or the bull-headed one, right? Or the minotaur in the maze, because this is also known as the Taur and the bull, right? Or bull, right? And Santos is like a master of the whole thing with the terrible Taurus, right? Like he who identified this and exhaust this for you, right? If you want to know more about the machinations of this and how it works, Santos Bonacci. But you're also sitting in one, right? And so my perspective of these kind of things is to take you into different aspects of how this functions and how it functions in conjunction with the matrix. So what you technically have here still is what you would call a masculine and a feminine, or a positive and a negative. So you have two shapes here, and this is why they tell you that the ancestors themselves, in an ancient book actually I read, it said the ancestors themselves are more like the shape of your genitalia, okay? So we find geometrically that what that is referring to is one of our ancestors looks like this, and the other one of our ancestors looks like this, which brings us back to the yoni and the lingam. And this aspect is electric, or L, and this aspect is magnetic, right? So when the shaft, which you see, this is also the diagram of our generators, how we're producing power in the reality. When the shaft goes down into the actual wiring, this is what creates the electromagnetic field and the energy and causes the generation. Now that generation then lights up the entire field, and the field becomes interconnected. So anybody who connects into the field all of a sudden has access to every single thing in the field. What gives us access is, one, our DNA, because the DNA is the spiral of this exact field. What gives us secondary access to the field, which you would call like a Merkaba, or where language then creates a connection, is the linguistic systems that we're using. So let me take a step back for a minute. I'm going to leave that here on the board, and then I'm going to go right to my notes, since I've been able to explain that a little, and then I'm just going to clear all of this up. Okay, so language. So let's understand that factual, like I've done all of the research, that it's known that the original language came from the stars. okay? Because each of the stars have a vibration, so they're playing a tone. How you would know this is that in that symbolism that I just showed you, how this comes out esoterically is, remember I showed you that the L is the shaft or the rod, right? So there it is up there, the L. So in order for life to begin in this physical world, an L must, or electricity must be fired off. So our language is electric. Even deeper than that, the electron, again, that's going into the field is obviously the male's sexual organ, which gives off a electron, which opens up a field. And then from that point, the spirit is capable of imploding, and then life is created. So what happens is that, so since this field is also the language, and I just kind of need to catch my train of thought here. So the field, okay, so the field in itself is filled of vibrational frequencies, which are sounds. And so when you know certain sounds, you're actually able to open up certain parts of the field, first within yourself and then to the corresponding field. And that's why you have mantras. Mantras are also called yantra, which the word means a machine. And so what this is a reference to is that a series of words can actually be used to plug into this system like a machine and then dial forth commands from the machine. So I'm just bearing witness to, in across cultures, in all systems, there is an awareness that tones and vibrations can control or actually interact with the field, because the field is tones and vibrations. And even deeper than that, that the cross points of the field itself is actually the powers within themselves. And so if you could be able to draw down the power of the stars, that's what it's called. If you could draw down the power of the stars by making the actual sounds of those respective areas inside of the field, then you would basically be bringing that energy down to earth. And that's what language does. It brings the power of the stars down to earth through our vocal cavity, which in itself is like a womb. And then we speak with the electricity, and then it comes into existence, or it comes out void. Meaning that if you don't know what you're saying, then everything that you're saying does not really manifest. It doesn't birth. It's like an abortion. Versus if you have a perfect torus, meaning that you have like a perfect system of manifestation, then everything that you're saying is manifesting. So I'm trying to give you a picture here of how this would all work, and what is it manifesting from, by letting you see the connection between the stars and the tones and the vibrations that we're using in words. Because then you'll be able to put together that, well, that means then that if a language is only calling certain angles in the stars, then when you put it into your mind, that would become your story. Because your story is a song. Your story is a vibration. Your story is a frequency. So what languages are is basically a coding program or a story that you are placing inside of your mind that is based on vectors, meaning points that correspond to the stars and the energies of the stars. So you can imagine then that the greatest map that people were looking for a while was how to determine what energies were coming from different parts of the torus field. You see what I mean? Like that would be what's next. It's like, okay, so now we figured out how it works, but how do we know which one is the good one and how we know which one is the bad one? And that brings me to the original reason why I jumped on the board, was how the concept of a good angel destroys a magician or anybody else trying to practice mysticism. Because when you're assuming that there's a good angel, that means that you're only trying to maybe call good angels. Think about how the entire Catholic tradition is set up. They set out an array of what they call the good angels. And then what do most people do? They're not going to pray to the bad angels or the demons, right? They're going to only pray to the good angels. But the problem is that they're completely off with how the field works. What Solomon meant by that, you needed to, if you were going to evoke a demon, you needed to evoke an angel, the angel that correspond to it, was the same thing I explained earlier by that the whole goal of the real mages was to be able to know what energies counteract other energies. So if a person was sick, they would know the opposing energy to that sickness, and then they would cancel out that sickness. That was their use of the field. So it wasn't like, well, let me only call the good angels, because if you called anything from one hemisphere or one pole, if you may, from the Taurus field, you would imbalance your whole life and your whole system, because you did not evoke the other thing on the opposite of the spectrum, i.e. the angel and the demon, to cancel that energy out. And I want to make sure that this is very clear that this field that I'm showing you, it really required that a person be able to balance out at all times their field and not leave anything unattended and unmaintained. So this would be like every time you talked, you were birthing something, and these were your children, and you needed to make good on your word. That's why, like, your word was the most important thing. Like for your great-great-grandparents, it's like their word is like everything. Never go back on your word, son, right? So your word is who you are, right? And so you're supposed to make your word not come back void. So you're supposed to make your word sound. And now you can then see why that, okay, so let's go in a little bit deeper about, so what is in the Taurus field? So if we wanted to map it out, it's almost like, because the Taurus field is not the final thing. There is something beyond the Taurus, right? There's like one grand thing, but before that grand thing, there is the Taurus. Where humanity is at right now is several levels below all of that. So it's like to restore the original donut, if you may, inside of the consciousness, the awareness of the Taurus, is as simple as looking at certain levels of symbolism. Like, for instance, when an orchestra is about to begin, what is the orchestrator holding in his hand? He's holding a baton. What do you think that baton is symbolic for? It's the electron. It's the Elohim, if you may. It's because of the simple awareness in metaphysics that, as I said again, if you're standing on the ocean or in front of the ocean at the shore, all the waves are coming to you. But where are the waves coming from? So you can hypothetically answer all these questions for yourself. Wherever they were coming from would have to be the center, right? Because you know that how waveforms work. When you put your finger in water, then it sends the wave from there, and then it goes all the way out. So that all the way out there is us standing at the shore. So that means that in the center, there's got to be some type of drumstick or pole or tube or shaft that's constantly beating against the drum, if you may, or the shri, as I call it, or the triangle, and it's sending out these waves. And this is why I was peeping out some African knowledge the other day, and this African tribe was like, well, we have the first language because the first language, as we know from all of our ancestors, was from the drum. So I was like, okay, this is interesting because, you know, I know it's in the stars, but how does it get in a drum? Because there's an actual rhythm or a tempo that is coming within the pulse of the planet. And a master that knows this tempo, because it constantly changes. Remember, it's a song. It's the orchestrator. So they know how to send that, the opposing repulsion. As I said, now, remember, we talked about before that this magus, this magician, this being that is enlightened, this illuminated one, whatever you want to call it, this is not a normal phenomenon necessarily in the whole schema of things. This is the result of language. We talked about that this writing things down has allowed us to carry certain knowledge. Like when you look at the Vimana Shastras, the Bhagavad Gita, the hieroglyphs, the coiniform, Like we've been recording the progress of humanity and even its spiritual growth across time. So language is bridging time because somebody can read that in the future and start actually conjuring that and creating it and bringing that field back to, not necessarily back to life because it's always living, but into the space that they're actually in. That's what language does. So this is an awareness that, okay, well, wow, all right, so if you ask the question, well, 7, how could something like the torus, which seems so organic, be filled with these things we call letter or words? And you know it's not only through vibration or talking, but it's also because everybody that has a torus also speaks a language. And because we're all interconnected, we're like spraying letters all over the torus field. And what that also does for a magician is serve as vector points inside of a person's mind. And this is why someone can come up with some words and talking to you, and then you can all of a sudden change your mind. You see what I mean? Like you could go to school, somebody can say something to you, and then all of a sudden you change your mind. How could that happen? And change your vibration, change your frequency. Somebody say something wrong to you, your frequency is going down. How? Where is that connected? It's connected in the language. And because the torus is now full of languages, because everybody's mind is connected to the torus, it serves almost like a direct hack to the original field. Okay, something that we're saying that we need so much, we need to communicate, but we still can't seem to understand each other in it. But then there's this higher language that doesn't even involve verbal communication where you can really feel and know everything about a person. So just peep out how the whole thing is designed inside the matrix. So also, we found out that inside of this matrix, there were characters because the matrix in itself was actually geometry. Let me check it out, make sure everything's broadcasted, making sure everything's good. Okay. Geometry. Okay, so when you finally unfold the whole geometry mythos, because at the end of the day, not everybody's a mathematician. Some people think that, that's too complicated, so I'm not like feeling that. That means that their approach towards geometry at times is to try to connect geometry to the same system that maybe what we don't need to learn, because it has a tendency to be tough for people to kind of relate geometry to spirituality. While then there's a whole new wave right now where all they believe is that geometry, all spirituality is geometry. So somewhere in between those two, there is the awareness that the actual coding system of the torus is phi and pi, the golden rectangle and the golden triangle, and the gnomon and the golden triangle. Okay. And when you know about that geometry and how it all comes together, you'll realize that there were certain shapes that somebody who put it all together came up with to show you that there were literally characters inside the torus. These characters, when unfolding the geometry certain ways, even become apparent within their shape. And this is the star, the ace, the sun, the king, the jack, the queen, the deuce, the kite, and the dart. This also makes up our 7 planets and Rahu and Ketu, which gives us 9. This is why Enealogy and the Droidish numerology and systems that are actually predicting the character of a person because of what stars they're coming from. And it's because the stars are characters, just like we're seeing in Hollywood right now, but this is the real one. And a person can be casted into one of these characters. This is why we have young stars, we have 4 stars, we have administrators, we have forecasters, we have sistars, we have frost stars, we have pranksters, we have test stars, we have ministars, we have monsters, we have mobsters, we have jestars, we have magistars, we have mastars, and we have disasters. Right? So we have all of these stars coming in this cast to play out these roles that are being dialed in through the language and actually integrated within the torus that is inside of our field. And this could all be going on without us even knowing it. right? So this is the connection between the stars, you, the Taurus, and everything that is going on in your life, the rulerships and the dominions, the principalities, the external gods, the angels, the demons. This is where all of this is actually coming from. You got people that now we're in wartime, so they evoke protection. What kind of school did you graduate from? The opposite of war is love, not protection. Protection is war. So when people evoke, oh, God, protect me, they're asking to actually be wiped out. It's not understanding what are the frequencies that balance out what is going on and what is happening. And it's a frenzy now, because now that the language has been impacting people's mind and they don't understand the language, then there's a issuing forth of confusion. So let's clear up a couple other things. Atlanta is really Atlantis. It turns out that there are already maps that show so proficiently that the United States is Atlantis. And how they were able to pull over on everyone, the erasing of that awareness is another blow to the whole thing, just as the word black means really pale or white, and how everybody looks at that as actually opposite right now. So they've turned the entire world upside down. Here's the map. Let's zoom in a little bit here, right around Costa Rica. Costa Rica is Atlan. Costa Rica is right here, by the way, sitting here. There's the Isthmus of Panama, which is right down there. There's the Atlantic, right? And then this is known as Atlantis Insula, or the Isles of Atlantis. And then how they threw everyone is that there were a couple of these island chains that for sure sunk. And maybe there was some tourist manipulation going on in those places, which caused total meltdowns of areas when they're actually not utilized properly. That's probably for sure what they're talking about with Atlantis misusing the technology. The only technology is the Taurus. But if you make an external one of these like Tesla did, and then you don't have the opportunity to turn it off. Remember that knocker that Tesla created, that when he cut it on, it was based on the same frequency that the guy that's doing electricity for he's finding electricity in the ground, or being able to pull electricity out of this thing he's calling the God frequency. And it's basically this pulse. As we know, there's a pulse to the world. Just like you have a pulse on you hold your finger to your vein, you have a pulse. The world has a pulse. It's alive. And if you put something on that pulse and you get it to tourbillon, okay, that's the term. Tourbillon. Look up the technology. It was when the watchmaker discovered that he can create a coil that winds itself up based on the energy of a pulse. And then it basically is a perpetual device. My great friend Hans was also telling me that the heart works the same way, that the veins are actually themselves a spiral. And when the heart is not pumping, really, it's using the repulsion or the tourbillon force from the veins to actually move the energy and pump through the body, which is it's basically against what is the standard way that people understand how the heart works. So everything that truly works, everything that was really ours and that really was original, functioned on how the Taurus works. And so when you learn the Taurus, you know yourself, and it's alive. It's not the word, it's the word that does not come back void, meaning that the moment that you start looking into this whole thing, you'll see it everywhere. For instance, when you're inside of a car, what do you really need to grab to steer where you're going? The wheel. What does the wheel look like? A donut, right? What is it in the center that is able to then connect the donut to the wheels? The shaft. No car is made different than this, because the car is modeled after the same thing that the human body is modeled after, the same thing that the universe is modeled after. So as I said before, between the Shri, which is the triangle that has the bent edges, right? Which is the lattice work inside of the fields of the torus. That's the horizontal and the verticals and how they meet. So that symbol, along with the tube, right, which we're calling the drumstick, you can orchestrate anything. And this is why, of course, like, look at the TV. What is it called? The tube, because it is electric. It is Elohim. It is that fertilizing component. So it's putting things into your mind. They literally call it a tube because you're sitting there receptive, right? And then what's coming out of it is sound. That sound is then embedding you or impregnating you with ideas. Those ideas are connected into the stars. And then when you speak them, it gives the opportunity to draw down the power of the star. And when you act in a certain character, it's drawing down the power of the stars. And with your awareness of this, then it's possible that you can truly protect yourself. This would be the awareness of professional technology. That's what the word means to me. Professional technology. What would be the professional technology? The awareness of the torus. This is why there is an agenda about what the earth is designed, because how the earth is designed, because if they put everybody on the spheric world before you know about the torus world or the original world, then you just get circles run around you, literally. The spheric world is for someone who has graduated through the torus system already and now knows how to enter the fourth dimension, which is like an elevator of manifestation. That's what spheric projections are used for. That's what bubbles are used for, because they reverberate the frequency inside of the sphere. Versus the toroid is like a teacher. It gives you the yin and the yang, and it lets you see every time you pull one thing, how you need to pull another. When you cut a tree down, if forbidding that you ever did, but we got to build houses, I guess. If you cut a tree down, then you need to plant a tree. If you throw something away, then you need to go pick up a bunch of trash. It's like that awareness that, I'm just trying to stay balanced in this. While other folks, they just want to kick up waves. They want to go and send out lots of vibrations that they're just going to get hit back in the face with. It's like, when somebody slams something against a wall and like a rubber ball and it just hits them right back into the face. That's what the language can be like when somebody doesn't understand. It's called the reflux current. You just get hit right back with the same spell you were trying to cast on somebody else because you're utilizing magic improperly, right? And the true existence here, what would really eliminate fear for you? What would eliminate death for you? What would eliminate loss for you? It's that ability to actually be able to nullify time, to be able to stay in Zen or 0 point, to be able to operate in a space that is free of any kind of restrictions. And you create that space. Do you know what they call that? Hold on. Do you know what they call it in technology right now? They call it noise canceling. Noise canceling. How does this work? How does noise canceling headphones work? It detects the sounds that are going on around you, mainly the continuous sounds, and it sends that exact sound back that you would be hearing through your ear back out, so that it just cancels out the sound. So then you hear almost nothing. So if you can imagine energetically sitting in a noise canceling field, like if your whole frequency and vibration was stable, you wouldn't age. Now, I want to give this insight. I call it level 1 to level 3 type of being, not in any respective order. Level 1 type of being, selfish, only cares about themselves, nobody else. You watch these people roll through life. Generally, they're loners. You find them in Vegas somewhere. They maybe have one bag of money. They go from place to place. They don't have anything solid, no wife, no nothing. Maybe some little fling or whatever, but nothing is stable. These kind of people later on in life, they regret everything. They have no energy to go on. They wish it was all over. Level 2. Level 2 is a person who at least has a family, a clique, a gang, a tribe, or something else to love beside themselves. Some type of driver or passion that allows them to summon more than the energy that just belongs to them, but actually the energy that actually is connected into more, or the tribe, right? And you find these people being able to amass certain levels of strength and resistance and progress because they have something. Like, think about the mafia for the family, right? So the whole interconnected system in which they created, right? So they're able to go a little bit further than that loner. And then finally, level 3. This is what I would say is the Messiah level. The person who has actually opened themselves up to assist everyone, because there's nothing here that they get it. They figured how all this stuff works, and they were able to glimpse even into the next stage of things, and to see that nothing really dies. Everything that you think that you lost is still there. You see what I mean? So they're able to see that, and then they're also able to come back into the space. So they're not trying to figure out how they're going to get something from you and how this is going to happen and all these different objectives and agendas. And so that gives them that level of power. That's why they reach that Messiah-like power, because they are now they're connected to everything. They see everything as being a part of something that they want to assist, and something that they want to get to understand this knowledge and this power. So when we have big objectives, we need to make sure that those objectives, if you plan on getting them accomplished, actually include everyone. And if you want to understand the interface in which you would do that through, it would be the Taurus. And as I said, it's everywhere, and it's not dead. It is alive. And the opposite of that would be God, pretty much, the dead God, because these are all gods of the dead. You can read through the lore if you want to bore yourself with it. But what humanity has latched itself onto, it's just like it's an all-time low. So there only means that there's one direction that we can go. But I ask you specifically to stay on point, because what is trying to be robbed from you is basically what gives you the ability to be beyond gods. That is the Taurus field. That is your DNA. And if you forget about that, let folks manipulate that are on a destroy mission, that worship a blind, crazy God, that would probably be your lesson. And I would assume that the universe would keep running you through that drill as your parent. The Taurus would keep running you through that drill. You would keep going through that maze. You would keep meeting that Minotaur in the middle of the maze, which is the Taurus. It would be terrible. Just like you see when a person goes through an ayahuasca journey and they just, they came in playing with it. They've done no cleansing at all. It's terrible when they see themselves. That's what that mythos is really about. Somebody say, well, how is the Torah, how is the Taurus terrible? Because if you read in the Torah tells you that the God is terrible. But what it's referring to is that a person who is not awake, all of a sudden becoming awakened to their Taurus field, now has to see who they really are. And the experience is terrible. They're crying, they're scared, they're running, they're screaming. So he was just describing what goes on when a person sees their Taurus for the first time and didn't even know that they had one, and then actually really gets to see themselves and what ego has done to them. And this is, as you can see, they roll up the Taurus. This is why you know they already in the know. They ain't going to tell you. But the Taurus, as we know, is the Torah. They roll it up even in the scroll just to show you that's what the pattern is. And then they also are hinting to you that your story, or the scriptures, the stories are written inside of the Taurus field. So this means that there's already a prophecy. Okay, there's a prediction or a prophecy or projection. So you could read the stars, and because you know that the story of the stars continues to play out from beginning to end, if you knew what was going to happen, you would be able to profit from it. If you knew what the price of Bitcoin was going to be in the next month, you would profit, even if it went up or down. You could short it if it was going down, or you can bid on it if it's going up. It will be a profit for you. So anybody who knows the future is a prophet, because anybody who knows the future also knows, like, okay, well, with this situation, I'm sure wheat's going to go up. I'm sure soybeans are going to go up. I'm sure X is going to go up. Potash is going to go up. Fertilizers are going to go up, because, 25% of all of the economy is set off into this country. So the future, basically, that part of it. You may not know everything, but certain parts of what's going to happen anyway. You're able to not just make a prediction, but know that that's part of the prophecy, and then you're able to profit. Who doesn't profit? The people who don't even know what's coming. The people who don't even believe in it. Don't even believe that there's a system that even tells you the future. But what we're talking about is the Taurus is a time machine. It's anti-gravity. It's 0 point. Look at what we're talking about here. It's fourth dimension. What it would look like when you were there, just so you could clue in on this, is that, so I would be in this room, right? Fourth dimensional being can be in this room. I'm moving like this. Its vibratory frequency is almost imperceptible unless I'm an empath, that it's actually standing here in the room observing everything that's going on, and even able to put words in as I'm trying to conceive those words as thoughts in my own mind. You see what I mean? So if you don't have control of your vessel, that's what I was saying before. Like, you could see this even in some videos on YouTube where they show you the Tibetan masters that, or Nigong, Qigong masters, that they know how to grab the Taurus field around your body. Like, it's like a net, and they can pull you with that net. That's just how. How are they doing that? Because they have their own field activated. They can interlace in with your field, give it the coordinates, etc., the juice that it needs, and then pull that field. That's also what healers do. They real healers, they know the field around the person. They can energetically tell where the rip is in the seam. Because also, let's get to some other parts about what happens with the Taurus field when it gets disconnected. So if each of those points of light, if you may, are actually your connection to the Taurus field, especially with the corpus callosum, what happens when they get burned out? The hemispheres start becoming lopsided. And this becomes why we live in two worlds now. Remember, you live in two worlds now. One world, you think you can die. Well, let's put this correct. One world, you can die. The other world, you can't. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the physical world, and I'm talking about the dream world. In the physical world, it appears that people can die here. But in the dream world, if you've ever died there before, you'll be back again tomorrow. Back again in the same night. So you cannot be killed there. So why is there two different worlds? Because the hemispheres are not matched up. That's why in most people's dreams, they don't really understand what's going on, because there's no communication between the two hemispheres. They don't know how to communicate with each other yet. So you're seeing a cucumber walking down the sidewalk getting melted by a soldering iron. And you're like, what the hell does this mean? It's because your hemispheres are mismatched. So then a person comes into the physical reality and mixes it up themselves a bit more, the confusion. Jumps into all these different things that they're being guided to do in daily life. Feel like this, feel like that, believe this, believe that, think they're like this, think they're like that, you should do this, you should do that. As if something is literally talking to the person, because what? They're possessed, basically, by an angel. Hopefully it's a good angel. This is as much as humanity at this stage, at this time, has been able to figure out about what is actually going on. And as I said before, there are already beings that know this. There are already men and women that know this and practice this. Of course, they wouldn't tell you what was going to allow you to regenerate. Just like Dan Winter said, this is your only chance at immortality, kid. The only thing you really have that belongs to the infinite is the Taurus.